Well, let's get rolling then. Tom, you've popped up online and we've met in my CDM Hub Telegram group. You've come to our gatherings and we've had lots of interactions. We did a poetry session a while back. It was
great.
a community wellness gathering for us. And so I'm super stoked to be in person, live and in person with you.
In the flesh.
That we did a podcast. And that was the missing piece, really. And we're just going to develop things from here. So really appreciate your focus on working with disaffected youth, people who are looking for a way forward. And, we want to hear about your path, how you found your way and everything that's connected to that. So just to give people a bit of a background, if someone met you today without knowing your backstory, what do you think, what would you say is the key thing that they should know in order to relate to you?
It's a really good question because so often I meet people who do know a backstory, who have this previous version of me, who they've seen the version of me who went into dental school thinking I could do something there, or they've seen the version of me that has been at a bunch of these festivals, or versions of me that's done work with youth, and versions of me that's worked with tech. And it's, yeah, to what I'm leaning into more and more if I'm meeting someone new is this is leaning into presence, is being able to create an environment where whoever I'm meeting, they can begin things, and then I can add in elements on my path that I've seen where it's relevant. And for me, more and more that lens has been poetry, and using poetry as a vehicle to explore the areas of discomfort and disconnect in life, or where there's old narratives of the past that are no longer serving us, but yet are still in play. So that's the work I do, and how I engage with people is looking for ways to what I see as reorienting with soul essence.
Mm. Thanks. That's gives me a bit of insight, gives our listeners some insight. And to me, I also think that you've been involved with a lot of events or organizations that are perhaps seen as, let's say, rebellious or maybe slightly controversial because of their stance and because of their rejection of the status quo, let's just say. And it seems to me that your poetry is such a great way to get people to think and to be an activist without getting right out into the political debates. And so it seems to me like you're planting seeds and you're getting people to just think and see differently.
Yeah, and it's more than that for me. Is the poetry as work for the inner realm, starting within, where in my life have I been going along with some status quo, no matter what it is, in something that I do personally that isn't serving me? Where do I have a relationship with my family or my friends or my loved ones that there's distortions there because I keep showing up in a way that isn't helpful for that relationship? It doesn't have to be this all big global worldview thing for me. It can be, but more often I find that the most compelling parts to explore, and the parts that create the most change in the world, is where we go to the most personal level and have a space to explore that. And what I find really interesting with poetry is it's specifically giving a different voice and a different lens to whatever material we're working with in our heads and in our hearts that otherwise, well, couldn't be said in any other way. And then we can see it and then read it back and embody it in that process to allow me and the people I work with to say, oh, wow, I can see and feel something here that I wouldn't have noticed before if I hadn't gone into this lens to explore it. without any expectations of, oh, I'm putting this in a neatly packaged, rational set of words to say to someone else, or to put online and social media, or to communicate in whatever other way. It's the process of turning it into an art, and to the discipline, and to tuning into something more instinctive, intuitive, emotional, without being a victim to it. It's the act of observation that poetry is suited for in a way that I haven't found any other form that is. And that's what drew me to me when I decided I wasn't going to continue training to be a dentist. The poetry found me because I needed a way to convey the gravitas of the tension I was feeling without in a form that I couldn't find any other way of doing so.
So you're using poetry as a lens to allow people to engage with what's going on in their lives.
Yeah. And then from that place, it can then expand out to say, well, how does that affect other people? How does that manifest in the communities around me? It has to start from within, and then it can build beyond that, and it ripples out from there.
That's where we're very aligned, I think, because we also have that focus with Mycelium Hub of, okay, let's start on the individual and the personal level. And in your case, you've got that passion, that modality that you use, where you're not only creating poetry, but you're inviting people to create poetry themselves. So they're not consuming, they're not just reading what you've created, they're actually drawing out from themselves
Correct.
their own poetry.
Yeah, and that's been the real arc for me this past year, is really leaning into that. And even with that, I know the words that I do produce do give a voice to other people to speak to something that they might not have been able to access otherwise. People tell me this all the time, and I'm very grateful that I have a gift there that I get to share with people just through my own words. And what I'm finding beyond that is everyone has access to that poet within them to do the same for their own words and their own material in their own lives, whether I can be there or not. And so what I've been leaning into, especially now and going forward with this year, is co-creative spaces, creating opportunities to say, well, here's my lens as a poet, here's some of the things I picked up and how I approach it. Let's find something that works for you. Let's see if you can create with that lens, or develop it into a lens of your own that helps you in a way that matters.
That makes sense. And I think it's really a beautiful contrast and a kind of remedy almost to this kind of digital consumerism where people are so involved in consuming content, and they're doom scrolling and looking, and we know the effects it has on mental health and overall sense of health and wellness. And so you're now saying, wait, you can create. You can say, "Hey,
you can create.
here's a way, and here's a way." And so you prompt people. I like the sessions that you do, that having participated, where you prompt people to go in and draw out their own poetry and become a creator in that process. That's a really good counterpoint. I wanted to just go back a little bit to your origin story, if you and contrast what feels alive to you right now compared with say 5 years ago when you were still on that other path. And you want to give us a bit of background on that process of transformation and how you kind of shifted what's important to you.
Yeah, a key piece of it for me is the difference between 5 years ago and now is my ability to deal with uncertainty. It was a big part of it for me. A big motivation for me going into dentistry was not having certainty on who I was and how I could show up in the world. I know I had good aptitude for sciences in academics, and thought, well, let's do something a bit more practical for it. But really, I knew it was also a path that, at least here in the UK, is very secure, as a good prospects for careers going forwards. And I
Mm,
thought, well, it's helping people in a way.
mm,
The difference between then and now is I hadn't made as much time as I have since to say, well, hang on, who am I really? How do I show up in the world? What skills do I have? Is there a path for me to create that myself rather than having to knowingly compromise different elements of my being just to fit into some model of a system that already exists. It's so I guess a part of that is also a discernment to say, okay, where can I show up as my full self and engage with another system if it's mutually beneficial? And what systems, if I was to engage with it, would I have to compromise my integrity and ethics? That's been the learning piece for me from 5 years ago to now. And what I find what I found interesting from the time even that I spent in dental school is people could come in with all sorts of issues with their teeth and their mouths, and I could make time to provide certain treatments. But I knew long term it wasn't going to help, and the overall trajectory is that things were going to get worse and worse and worse. It was a band-aid for a greater problem in a lot of these people's lives of just not being able to take control of the circumstances they were in and not finding a sense of agency,
mm.
whether it's succumbing to poor health and lifestyle choices that mean their dental health and whole body health is degrading. And what I came to learn is that as I moved into doing poetry with people, that is a place that we can actually talk about how do I feel about the agency and sovereignty that I have in my life? What does that look like? What stories from my past have influenced that? And if there's something about it that's not working, how can I change that story? How can I rewrite that in a way that does serve me? And that's what creates long-term change.
Mhm. Right. And so when I mean, dentistry, as you said, it's a pathway that's well respected, and yes, you are helping people, and yes, there is a financial security aspect of that. Um, but um, and so you left that without really knowing what's next. That's kind of a bold move. Like,
Yeah.
what can you tell us what it was that made staying impossible? Was there a specific
Oh,
thing?
yeah.
Or
I especially in the latter years of the training, the third and the time that I spent with the fourth year, um, I was finding myself increasingly at odds with the idea of, oh, I'm just going to tick boxes for this treatment and that treatment just to say that I'd done it. When really what I could see with so many of the patients I was seeing is that's not the treatments they need on so many levels.
Mm.
Or it's even like, oh, we'll try and do another big filling or a root canal just in case, but it's likely the tooth is gonna, have to come out anyways. And it's like, well, why are we gonna put someone through this anyways? Um, I became really increasingly frustrated with that, um, and at the same time getting burnt out in the process as well. I felt like I had no agency in that system. And there I was doing that in the daytimes. I was working other jobs in the evenings to pay for my rent as well and weekends. So it was a route straight to a burnout for me. Um, that's and the irony of there we go. I'm frustrated with having patients with me who I can't work with helping them find agency in their lives, and there's me not being able to find agency in my life, thinking I've lost myself in this process and just going through the motions of whatever supervisors say to do or whatever's expected of me on clinics and so forth.
I'm curious, did your efforts to provide a more holistic, let's say, approach rather than this piecemeal ticking boxes, as you put it,
Yeah.
did that did you voice that, and did you have a pushback from that, or what was that like trying to kind of um, advance that, or was that just a mental process for you, like you were observing it and thinking, oh, this isn't very good? Or were there situations where you'd try to suggest something like, you know, this is a bigger problem than just dentistry?
Well,
What
I
was the
certainly,
responses?
yeah, I remember prompting questions on a lot of things about health, food people are eating. Do we need to be prescribing these drugs or giving certain medications, um, or prescriptions that when we could we do something else? Could we do something natural? Could we do something more holistic? And there was no appetite there. It was just saying, no, this is what we do. This is what you need to do in order to sign the boxes at the end of the year to get the piece of paper to say you're allowed to practice. And even if I could come to a consensus with someone to say, yes, maybe this isn't the ideal way to do something, the response is, well, this is the circumstances we've got and this is what we can do. And
Mm,
I and that was a big conflict for me, because I spent a lot of time with a lot of holistic dentists as well in that process in my spare time, where I could to see how is there anything, well, A, what's possible beyond here, and B, is there anything I can do now that's a bit better? And what I found was that even to get to a point, if I kept my head down and just pushed through with everything I disagreed with, um, to get the piece of paper to say I could then, I'm invited to go off and practice and then go and do things more holistically, that
mhm.
I was still putting the lives of everyone I was seeing as a student lower than people I could hypothetically see in the future, knowing that this person doesn't need this fluoride varnish, or they don't need a root canal full of heavy metals in the root fillings, or whatever it is. And it didn't feel right to me to put the lives of people I was coming to as a student lower than people I hadn't even met at that point.
Yeah,
And I wasn't willing to continue with that, because it was a compromise on my values, my ethics for me, and it was feeding into my burnout, and ultimately prompted my decision to leave those studies, to say if I can't show up with integrity in this field and in my training, I don't want patients coming to me if I can't hold that level of integrity,
mm,
because that's what I would want from anyone I go to about my health, is that level of integrity. I wasn't willing to go play into that double standard for myself.
I understand. And that that kind of answers the next question that I was going to ask, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in a similar place, but they probably haven't taken that step yet. They haven't made the leap, as it were. And there's that question around, sometimes you just have to kind of push through.
Mm.
And it's like, well, it's tough, but I've got to finish my studies, training program, what have you.
Mhm.
Um, but sometimes there's a misalignment. And I feel like the way that you've talked about it is really helpful to help someone in that place to really see, am I just do I need to just pull myself together and get through this? Or is there a misalignment where
Mm.
carrying on is not worth it?
Yeah.
And you just better do it now. And the later that you do it, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah.
Hey,
And what I learned for me in many aspects was even beyond that I wasn't seeing at the time, was there was so many things that were misalignments there for me. It's at this point now I realize far more my aptitude for, I guess, project-based work, and being able to switch things up in certain ways every now and again, that with hindsight, I wouldn't have been able to do with a career in dentistry going forward. And so
because it's
I'm not,
very continuous,
yeah,
the same kind of
yeah,
work.
completely, and still fits into, although it's a form of healthcare, it still fits into that 9 to 5 model, really. And when I went into it, I thought, oh, that's what I need. I just need a set block here where I do the work and then switch off completely for the rest of the time. And I've realized that no, that's not how I work. I'm always working with ideas or whatever, projects or things I want to do that are in my head, and it's just in some periods of time I'm actively working on that, and in other periods of time I'm saying, well, here's a time for me to relax or to rest or to let new inspiration come to me so I can show up to the next burst that I need for that task. And I'm someone who
Right.
gets a lot of energy from being able to switch into, I suppose, different roles or different contexts where I wouldn't have been able to get that had I continued through dentistry. And it helps in the work that I do, especially with poetry, to be able to work more intuitively, to flip the script if I'm doing a one-on-one session with someone where I'm doing poetry, to say, okay, well, I had an idea of something we could do in this session, but clearly you've got something really burning that we're going to go into and explore there in a way that the rigid frameworks and treatments and the way that the dental career is set up just wouldn't have allowed me to do. So,
Yeah, you said a key word there for me, for my listening, that intuition, that you strike me as someone who's quite connected with his intuition um, through your art as well. And when you work in that way, you may need to, rest and go for a lot of walks for a period of 3 days in order to figure something out. And when you're in that 9 to 5 routine, there just isn't that that option, that freedom. You
yeah,
show up
it
on time.
for me, it was a detachment of, it wasn't correlated to what my natural rhythm is, which does ebb and flow and change at times.
Yeah.
And I need that flexibility in order to accommodate that for me to show up as my best version of myself. And I couldn't in such a system.
I think that's something people increasingly feel, certainly in the circles that I move in and the people that I talk to. So it's a more authentic way to live, perhaps. When you started at dentistry school and you'd gotten a certain way down the track, there's always this thing that happens, and I've certainly experienced that in the past, where people, particularly parents or well-meaning people that know you, say, well, but at least you should finish that degree, you should finish that thing. And then from there, then at least you've got some kind of foundation. And don't throw away what you've put these several years into. It's kind of like there's this responsibility to bring it to completion, but at the same time, you've got all these nagging doubts in the background. So, having gone through that, what would you say to someone who's at that precipice and they're just trying to make that decision and they're under that pressure of like, no, you've now studied for 3 years, like just do your last 2 years or whatever the thing is?
Well, the first question for me in that position was, okay, there's maybe 2 or year and a half left. How do I even know I'm going to be able to get to that position? I got to the point, well, burnout, I was depressed, I was suicidal. Like, that was, even the thought of being able to make it through another year and a half of that was so beyond me. And that, well, what's the point of pushing through if it is going to completely destroy me? If I kill myself over it, it doesn't matter if it's, oh, just stink through to the end then, does it?
No.
It's that,
Uh,
it's, we can, it's great to have a plan. It's great to have a plan. And there's so much power that comes from the discernment of being able to realize this plan isn't working. There's factors I hadn't considered when I've made this plan that can't just be, I can't just hack and tweak and bolt it onto the plan and still make it work. Sometimes these things are so foundational to the plan's design originally, that the plan needs to change. That's what I found.
you just have to prioritize your personal well-being, your personal health and mental and physical health and well-being, right? And those other people can't balance out those things. They're not in position.
Yes. Yeah.
They're not going to be able to help you heal or whatever. They just want to see. I mean, in some cases, it's like there's this thing of when you have a partner or parents, they want to be able to say what you do. So,
Mm.
oh, Tom, oh yes, he's a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to say, Tom, well, I'm not sure. Like, what is?
Because it's an afraid of other people not being able to deal with the uncertainty.
Yeah.
The idea that, oh, they've got it figured out because they can say what's happening with other people. There is and it's that need to be respected that I think bleeds through. And yet those projections of people wanting me to do a certain thing so that they can then say that and get an idea of who I am. It's just because they're in their own problem solving phase of working out who I am. But the paradox and the irony is of by capitulating to whatever projections from others of who I might be, if I try and mold myself to be that, my actual identity isn't coming through with that. And so those questions keep coming of, oh, who are you really? Oh, who are you really? Oh, what? Because there's no alignment there. So although, for a moment someone could say to me, oh, yes, you're a dentist. If there's no alignment with me in that career path, the moment they start asking other questions beyond that, the misalignment becomes clear.
Yeah.
And it's only going to invite more questions, and often questions as projections to try and work out that as well.
Yeah. So at some point you realize the futility of carrying on down this path.
Yeah.
That even if you have that title, if you're not into it, then it's just not going to hold up. It's not going to be a coherent identity. And so then what's the point? You often speak about agency and self-trust, and tell us a little of your thoughts on how to rebuild agency and self-trust when the systems that we're a part of have often trained us to outsource those. Right? Trust the government, trust the healthcare system. And, we've had some experiences during COVID. We don't need to go into that, but there's certainly that tendency of, oh, someone else will take care of it. Like, how do you rebuild agency?
Be willing to be vulnerable. Be willing to admit, I don't know something, or I'm scared of something, or I'm really hurting over something that's happening to me or how I show up in the world. Be willing to take a risk on that level. Be willing to step out of the performance of whatever it is we might want other people to see of us and be seen for a moment, and then just observe what happens. And that's what I've really come to appreciate about a lot of the other young people that I've worked with in opening this up is once there's a container where it's safe to bring on who I am and what I'm working with and my doubts and insecurities and things where I'm worried that people might attack me for saying what my truth is, that's where healing happens. That's where I have an experience of being seen from a place of full alignment. That's powerful.
Right.
That's a reminder of agency.
Go. So you create spaces where people can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then you can go into that. And so let's explore that a little further when, there's this common advice of listen to yourself. And sometimes people get told that, but they feel frustrated that they've never been told to. Is that, or they haven't tried it, right? So,
and what does that even mean, to listen into myself? Am I listening to stories I keep telling myself that, maybe I developed them because something happened to me 5, 10 plus years ago, that was what I needed to survive in that moment, but that aren't serving me now? Is that listening to myself?
Yeah.
And if it is it helpful?
Is it something I picked up in a TV series or seen someone parents have told me years ago?
Yeah.
Like, how do you really discover that true signal of well, let's call it intuition that you often refer to. Like, what's something that you tell people to guide them to that, or to connect them with that, I should say?
Poetry. Super helpful, because what I found is the moment I invite that into the space, whoever I'm with, he can drop any expectations that it has to make sense on some objective level. It's an invitation to be imperfect or to be misunderstood. If that's what's required, whatever it needs to be, so that you can say what you need to in a way that you've not been able to until now.
Right? It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's
Yeah.
uncensored.
And
Just like,
that's the starting point for me when I do one-on-one work, or especially when I do group poetry sessions with people who may or may not have ever written poetry before. That's always a great starting point, is to, okay, drop the expectations, drop the, rational objective language if you want to go for weird, wacky imagery and emotions tied together, because that's what makes sense to you in this very moment, then go for it. And being able to land in that is really powerful. What I then do for people I work on a longer term basis of that is, okay, now we can start introducing elements of structure and form, or poetic techniques that I get to decide where they're used, because they actually speak better to that alignment.
mm,
And it has to begin with a point of speaking from a position where I'm not looking to be, you know, I'm not looking to match someone else's expectation of who they might think I am. It's just a place of making a declaration in the world of, I'm here and this is what needs to be seen.
that's great. It seems like with that approach, you're able to unlock people's creativity in a more general sense. Probably you've observed after those sessions that people are expressing, whether it be poetry or perhaps something else. Do you think that
Yeah.
that's the case?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah. It's, I've worked with so many people who didn't consider them, especially in the poetry realm, it was like, oh, I'm not really a poet, I don't really do that. And then I've invited them to write poetry with me, either as part of a group or one-on-one, and it's unlocked a whole cascade of emotions through that process. Um, we had it in Mycelium Hub in the workshop that we did there. We had some really powerful, honest moments of, this is something in a way that allows me to communicate. It speaks to what I actually feel about something. And maybe I can't say why it speaks to why I feel about it, but it just does. It's a much more intuitive way of working. And I do believe that creativity has to come from a place of intuition. Um,
Mm,
Knowing that
yeah.
what I'm working towards speaks to a beauty and a truth there. And and some people have a better aptitude of working with words in a certain way than others. And it doesn't mean that
Mm.
what one person has to say, possibly through a vehicle of poetry, is any more or less valuable than what someone else has, just because they can make it rhyme in a fun way or put some kind of certain structure in. Um, what matters most is that invitation to be creative, because I believe we're all creative beings. We create the life we want around us and the circumstances we're in. And sometimes we're creating shitty circumstances for ourselves because we still have those narratives playing in our head that we're not worthy of something else, or we have to show up in a certain way to get whatever.
Absolutely.
And with that, that's still painful. And it doesn't mean it's easy to come out of that. The invitation to creativity, especially with words, with the language, with the story that I have around who I am, why I'm here, or what my purpose is, working with that is what brings a sense of wholeness for me. And I think it brings a sense of wholeness and of healing with, well, not just I know it brings a sense of healing for everyone I do that work with, because it's that space to be seen and define who I am and who they are without someone else's projection distorting that, or feeling like someone else's projection has to distort that.
For sure. When you work with a lot of young people, you've got this project over to the youth, and you do community work there. I just wanted to ask a question about what is it that people bring to these circles that wider society seems unwilling to hear? Because I feel like with the work that you do, you come across a lot of things that people haven't been able to express or share in other channels or in other forums. And then, like, what are some of those things that people bring to that space?
We touched on it a little bit already. It's that willingness to admit uncertainty of, oh, I don't always know what I'm doing, or I feel really conflicted about this and I don't have some pretty answer to give you about what I'm meant to be doing. Because it almost, especially from what I've seen in so many circles, and especially in some of the circles who claim they stand for greater sovereignty or agency with other people, is, oh, young people have got to be this and that and do this and do that in order to make sure humanity's saved from destroying themselves. And that's not how it works. It's not how it works.
Hmm.
Young people have to find their own path to that. And the only person who knows what that looks like is them. And having a space to explore that, to define this is who I am, and to have a shared experience of other people doing the same, to say, oh, this kind of process, this kind of inquiry, this kind of development of my own sense of self is not only welcome, but also I'm finding is essential for creating harmony in my life. That's a big thing that comes through there. And so that leads into all sorts of themes of expectations from family that aren't serving the individual young people. It's not being able to find or not having an idea of where they can go for a meaningful career path, or feeling like the rest of the world around them isn't set up for the kinds of things that they're interested in, and not being able to find a way to keep themselves fed and have a roof over their heads and pursue the things that they know they feel called to.
That's a biggie, isn't it? Because when you're trying to find yourself, there's no real support from society or from the system, let's say, to look, we're going to pay your bills for a couple of years while you figure stuff out. You always got to be, you have to choose some path that you're on, and then you might get some support for that, but you don't really get support to be vulnerable, to not know. And so I think that seems like really important for you to provide those spaces, and it seems like something that there's a great need for.
Yeah. And even then, even if you do choose a path, then incentives to stay on that path and stay on that path and stay on that path, even when in other levels it might not be working, or not having a net. If I've gone down a path, to say, okay, now I want to have a go at stepping outside of that.
Yeah, that, and then
Nothing there.
they're penalized in the sense of, if you've been getting some kind of training allowance or something like that, and you stop, well, then that gets cut off.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for people to then forge their own path to keep surviving while figuring it out. Kind of.
Yeah.
In terms of the format that you use, so you've got in-person gatherings that you do, you've got online gatherings. Could you just kind of compare those, and like, what are the strengths and drawbacks of each of those, and how do you kind of use those two?
Yeah. So from the experiences we've had, the online gatherings is the most accessible point of entry. It's open to anyone in the world, no matter where they are, and it gives them an opportunity to, show up no matter what their, schedule is or where they might be, or if they've not got people around them where they feel confident in doing that. It is a great entry point and a way to keep touching base over longer periods of time if in-person connection isn't possible there. And that's really powerful and creates an anchor point there,
Mhm.
which I think is really useful and allows us also to learn from people all around the world. And that sharing is really powerful as well. And a reminder of, there's themes and patterns emerging everywhere around us and from all corners of the world that relate to what I'm going to. That in itself is really powerful. What I find in-person gatherings are or even one-on-one containers, whether hybrid, online, remote, whatever, in person, whatever, is to take the next step. There is something about our presence energetically that just cannot be captured in an online space.
Yeah.
To have not only the emotional and perhaps in mental, perhaps in some cases, spiritual support of a virtual container, also having this sense of a physical support there as well. The whole of my being is here in this space with you physically to support whatever needs to be supported right now is phenomenal and is absolutely necessary for particularly some of the much particularly for reworking some of the deeper narratives or modes of operating that aren't serving us anymore, to allow for cathartic releases or emotional breakthroughs. There's an energy there. We have physical energy fields around us that extend beyond just the flesh of the body.
Yeah.
And that doesn't get communicated in an online way. And it does create a sense of harmony and resonance when I can share with that in someone. And it's the whole of my being somewhere.
Yeah. And just picking up on that as well, like the two key aspects of this work. One is being vulnerable and sharing, but the other is also witnessing and supporting.
Yeah.
And that people also get to step into that and just be there witnessing as someone's being completely real. And
Yes.
I get the sense that in person that is much more powerful.
Yeah.
Just to kind of dream a little wider, do you think that when you look at the future of this kind of work and you think of physical spaces or spaces where people can come together, uh, do you envision places that people could maybe come to for a while to figure things out and kind of have time to connect with themselves, connect with others, connect with maybe?
Absolutely.
Well, what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
Bigger picture of this.
Yeah. The idea of retreat models or hubs where I or other people can go for an extended period of time does really interest me because of that container for the physical presence, which is part of what drew me to Mycelium Hub initially, because you are interested in that too and exploring it, and it's super valuable. What I find what I'm always thinking about is, okay, I can have this. I might be able to do a retreat where I have a super intense, super powerful moment physically over a set number of days. Maybe it's shorter, maybe it's longer. What can I do to keep that process going and take it with me into my life beyond those? I don't want, if I'm on retreat or if I want to run a retreat, which I am looking at for later in the year, I don't want someone just to come up, be here for a couple of days, have some amazing moments, but then go back to the same old life and have no growth out of that.
Exactly.
I'm always thinking about, well, what is it that will continue that growth beyond that? Having an online component to continually touch base is certainly a part of that for me. Um, and I'm also thinking about, well, how is it that this person can then be activated to start creating that in other communities around them or in the other physical spaces that they return to? And this is perhaps something that I'm now seeing the poetry and the inner language work that I do there is super powerful, because it's giving people a voice to communicate those things that they didn't have otherwise. And then if they can bring that back to the communities that they were in before, if they were on retreat, or if they've done work in a one-on-one container with me online that's in some ways separate from their life beyond them, can they start bringing things from that space into there that then changes the environment around them to continue that process onwards?
Sounds very
That's what
fully ordained.
it does sound very massive.
Oh, I'd love to see you bring that to life, and let's see what's going to develop, because certainly there's a great demand for this kind of thing. And I don't see anyone who's created it without an agenda, where your agenda is for people to be authentic and step into themselves and start creating, as opposed to join my religion and they'll also teach you some cool stuff, right? So it's always, you have to join something and then you might get some benefits. But I would love to see that come alive. And when the funds arrive for that, it sounds like you've got a plan for how that could be used to set up places that then, that allow people to not just experience a transformation, but to really integrate it to the point where they are then also inspiring or broadcasting or spreading whatever that is, and activating others. And so then that's true leverage, right? Where it's work where other people can then spread it out further, and you don't have to directly connect with everyone, because the people that you've activated can start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the integration is it's the key word there. And that's what I find with the poetry, is that in the process of writing, and then if I work with people on a longer basis, getting into refining and working with structure and looking things on a broader level to see, okay, how can I work with it? That process is the integration. That's setting in stone within me the language that I need to, and the ideas that I have to take that next step in my life, wherever it is, or to regain a sense of wholeness, or to start doing things differently in a way that nourishes and nurtures me, and by extension, the people around me.
Well, so now I can kind of reconnect that with the revolutionary aspect of your work, or transformational, or however you want to call it, maybe evolutionary. But in the sense that storytelling is so powerful in the society. And when you think about it, everything is a story, right? Whether it's a story of, well, they're manipulating us, they're doing psyops on us, or those people are taking away our jobs, or whatever thing is being told in society, it's so much about storytelling. So empowering people to tell their own story and to tell a story that's more authentic and more generative is a revolutionary act, because rather than just following someone else's narrative, people are then empowered to create their own, to perhaps create a vision that's more positive, because so much storytelling is about fear that so-and-so is going to attack us, so-and-so is going to take something from us. Even in the so-called awakened, community of sovereign or libertarian or whatever you want to call it, a lot of that is also a storytelling of what's being done to us.
Yes.
And
It's
so
not a story of what am I doing? What am I bringing? It's a case. It goes back to what I said earlier. I believe that we create all the circumstances and situations that we end up in, including the shitty ones. And yeah, it's a thing happening. And it is really tough, because it's like, well, how can that be fair? This person's done me wrong. I've lost my job here. This has happened. Yes. And those things absolutely suck. what are you doing by being a victim of that? You're still inviting yourself to see the rest of the world in that way and not step into a place of, okay, there's these things that have happened. How can I now create something out of that and to show up in a generative state rather than a reactive state? Because that's true sovereignty. That sense of self. I'm creating myself. It's not being created by what other people are doing to me.
That's great. So yeah, I can see that as a theme in your work where you're first needing to be vulnerable. You first need to be authentic. You need to face the fact that, hey, maybe I am responsible for my situation, because that is the gateway to then take responsibility and start creating a new story, a new life for myself.
And what a hero I could be if I end up in some really unfair, shitty circumstances and still find a way to create a life that's amazing outside of that.
Right.
Like, how phenomenal can that be? And that's the part of the work I'm able to do, is reframing some of those situations where unfavorable things have happened to people and saying, okay, can there be a narrative for creating something even more beautiful that couldn't have happened if this didn't? And supporting them in that process to get there.
I can really relate to that you know, it's so powerful to first of all accept what's going on rather than go into blame or denial. And once you accept, then you're able to own, and you can turn it around. So I think it's great that you're doing that work. It's very important work, and I'm sure you've touched a lot of lives with that. I wanted to talk a little bit about disillusionment, and it's kind of related to that point of like the accepting that I'm responsible for my situation in life. And so there's this kind of, if I get disillusioned, I could become disenchanted. Everything's futile, right? It's like overwhelming, futile.
And I've been there. That was me at the end of
Right.
dental school. So, oh, it's all futile. It's all,
Yeah.
pointless me doing this. That was what was feeding my suicidal ideation, was a complete lack of agency.
Pointless continue.
Yeah.
It's just end the
Yeah.
conflict.
That's it.
So what's the difference between that disillusionment and then coming through that to get clarity and say, okay, actually I can move forward, and actually I can, like, how do you shift that?
How I how I shift it for me is writing poetry.
Yeah.
And quite often that's I get a different lens or a different angle to, well, first I'm creating art out of it, an art that speaks to me. And even that process, it's, what a gift that the process of writing this piece has given to me, that I can see and read something that resonates with how I'm feeling. That experience in and of itself is a gift and a part of the healing process. And so that then opens the doorway for me to say, okay, what other aspects of what I've been through can I now make work for me? What am I being called to do? What am I being called to make out of that? It's moving from that state of consumption to the place of generation.
Right. It really relates to that rot and regenerate idea, right? Where it's like this dung pile of my life, this compost heap, pile of BS, whatever you want to call it. Here's what it is. Here's what's in there. Oh, well, maybe some of that could be broken down and could be shaped into something else. And so it's that creative moment where you then put pen to paper, or like, what is the actual mode of creation? Is it you're lying on your bed thinking about something you want to say, you go for a walk and you speak it into, you dictate it? Or is it, do you find it most powerful to actually write pen on paper, physical paper? What's the mode of creation that shifts you into that generative state rather than just despairing and being overwhelmed?
for me, it's normally a writing process for me, because the writing process is in itself the invitation to slow down and to make time to be involved in that physically rather than just having it stuck into my head. Then the transmutation of that energy from within onto a page, having it there. And then I can have a process of reading that back and reading it aloud. I really enjoy, in terms of a poetic lens and how poetry can be created, I enjoy both a spoken word and the written form traditions together. And part of what's become my own dance in my own poetic process is to say what could work both written and spoken. And there's a challenge in that as well. And there's a part of me that really enjoys the challenge and pushes me further to create in more ways that I wouldn't have done before.
So it's the craftsmanship of really crafting something,
And that
present to that.
Yeah, and that's what I give with the longer term work I do, is invitations to craftsmanship, because it's in that craftsmanship and the step towards mastery, which is, oh yeah, here we go. I have something really powerful to give to the world that other people could benefit from, that I've created for myself, and now I can share with others.
And it's immediate and it's available. Right? Look, who doesn't have access to a pen and a piece of paper?
Or even with that, whatever it is, just a pencil, or I don't know, a piece of chalk or charcoal to write on a slate, and if you don't have that, to speak it. I think it is possible to do it through spoken as well. And I think people will have different inclinations and ways that they work. And writing can be a bigger or slightly smaller part with that. And it's one modality of finding that language of my soul essence, my soul purpose, and what I'm here to do and what I'm experiencing that is a part of that, and to speak to it.
Got it. And so just moving that, extending that in time, the creative activity, the creative process. One thing that I've observed, and I've certainly done that myself at times, is to leave a career that wasn't serving me and jump into self-employment, and then, work really hard on that and actually burn out in the new thing. So I'm going from the frying pan into the fire. So do you have some thoughts on sustainable contribution when I'm getting out of something that's burning me out and stepping into a new way to fuel my existence, if you want? Is there a technique or a way of doing that is more sustainable in your experience? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. For me, I found it's in the one-on-one work I do, it's a co-creative element. It's how a lot of my sessions work, is I will be creating as well alongside whoever I'm working with, and we have a dance back and forward at that. That is a kind of work that nourishes me. I'm being nourished in the work that I take on. And this has been a strong learning point for me for the past year, is that actually, yes, I can do that kind of work that nourishes me as I do it. And that is what prevents me from getting to the burnout stages. And then I can realize in that if I have financial needs, that, I can attach a financial value to that process and say, this is what I need in order to create a space with you that's nourishing for the both of us.
So it's a bit like what you mentioned earlier about that ebb and flow. So you have a process of back and forth with someone, and then an ebb and flow between the types of activities or the types of media that you're in, between online and in person. So it's more varied in that way. It's actually
and it's a process as well of just tuning into where my strengths are. It's taken me this process to realize, yes, I work better in small groups or in one-on-one. I'm not as strong where I'm having to think about 10 to 20 different people in the space of one workday. And I've learned through doing and through experiencing that spaces, and then continue to seeing what's possible in the spaces that nourish me. It's it's that process of self-discovery, of self-inquiry, of finding what am I here to do? And then doing it in a way where if I'm then sharing that with someone else, I'm getting my needs met. In order for me to have this really nourishing space with you, here's what I need so that I can fully show up as my most integral self in that space with you, and not burn myself out because I'm trying to take on too much, or I'm doing it in a way that's not serving my biological needs, my emotional, mental needs, my spiritual needs.
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. And so what is it that, what are the kinds of organizations or people that see the value of what you do, that want to engage you for, you know, paid gigs or different things? I know that you've been involved with different festivals, Liverpoolco and Acapulco, things like that. Um, you've spoken on stage about your work. You've done poetry sessions at these events, and do you get a sense of, because as I'm talking to you, I see there's a great need for the kind of work that you do, and so I'm just wondering if that's being recognized in certain channels or in certain organizations in society that say, "Hey, this guy Tom, you know, like we need to get him on board to help us with the youth and help steer people away." I mean, because ultimately, what you're doing, you know, this is it's not just helping people deal with depression or suicide prevention. It's also keeping people away from let's say drugs or
Oh,
crime, or
absolutely.
being
Yeah, with the
involved
states. Yeah.
in very destructive things. That's actually, you're helping those people, but you're also helping society, the wider society, and say, particularly now where there's so much concern about, you know, disaffected youth, and a lot of people are worried about, well, AI is going to take my work. And what's your comment on that? Do you get some interest from certain sectors?
Yeah, and this is what I'm learning, that the interest is growing, and it's I find it interesting that even the more and more I realize how powerful it can be, it's almost like the rest of the world is realizing at the same time, oh, hang on, there's a piece of that there that can benefit what I do. Or
Yeah.
there's a pattern in so many of areas of, oh, the ways that we've been working and know in the past are no longer serving us now, because ultimately there's this disconnect from that soul essence, what I'm here to do, what my purpose is here, what I can gift and create with the world. Um, and I think that I speak to more and more people who maybe, it's especially true for me in the past few months, of like getting to an information saturation point. As I've had to, you know, I've cut out the podcasts or the social media or whatever, because I'm realizing something's wrong, and I've built up all this information, but I can't do anything with it. I feel stuck and at an impasse. And so and I'm finding really interesting that I'm having these conversations more and more. And so the next step, has been for me and pretty much everyone I've spoken to on this, is, okay, maybe I'm called to create something out of everything I've picked up so far. And that's being recognized, that energy of building something there with it.
Yes, there's definitely a sense of gluttony or overconsumption of
Mm,
and I've no, I've seen that in myself sometimes going online, there's like 15 tips for how to do X. What if, oh, I better save that for later.
yeah.
At some point, you've just got all these things bookmarked and stored, and but what do you actually do?
Yeah.
I'd say there's a great need to
A need for integration, to
integrate
integrate. Yeah, there we go.
and do something useful with that. Not just gather and collect. Eventually, it's just, what's the point? Or do you end up becoming a hoarder?
And I'd hit that point where it's like, well, I've got all this knowledge, and it's a dental school. I've got all this knowledge and insight about what's happening with this system and what's not working, but I'm not finding I can do anything with it. What's the point?
Exactly. Um, so I kind of touched on this point earlier on, and I just wanted to ask the direct question. And it's to do with, activism and politics and addressing the issues in the world. Um, and the question really is, what does art allow you to say that a straight analysis or maybe making a political statement or writing a manifesto can't?
There's, for me, it's around bias. Because no matter all these objective frameworks, for me, still come from a place of bias. Sometimes they're really useful biases, but there's still that element of bias there.
Mm.
Into the art and the poetry, it puts the bias up in front to say, yeah, this is exactly what I'm experiencing here, without trying to adjust it or mold it to what I think is happening on a broader level other than me. It's just saying, here's where I am, and this is the experience I've got as it pertains to me, and this is a piece of art that I create out of that speaks exactly to that process. No one's going to look at a piece of art specifically because there's a direct problem that they're looking to solve.
Mm.
I don't go up to the Mona Lisa because I'm thinking about, oh, how do I need to, oh, anything from, oh, I'm trying to reorganize um the my company structure, and to help because people I'm with are experiencing burnout and they're getting ill. I don't go to the painting
Mm.
just to get the direct answer from that. I do go to the painting to feel a sense of wholeness and to get inspiration by being in the presence of something beautiful and something that someone has put the craft in to develop, that doesn't serve one of those doing purposes. It serves a being purpose. So that's, in terms of what it can do, art is, it brings us into the being, which is where our ability to do comes from.
Yeah.
And so it's a realignment to who we are. And then once I'm reminded of that and I'm clear of that, then I can say, okay, what does this allow me to do in the world?
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so we're kind of getting to the end of the podcast, and I wanted to explore a little bit about our projects and how Mycelium Hub and Spore Society um, is going to move forward, and where we're going to have basically an academy of members who are moving on this path out of roles that don't serve anymore to imagine the best year ever
Mm,
and to really create a life that's more free. We often don't know what that looks like,
mm,
but it's the idea of camaraderie along the way, of saying, hey, I'm figuring this out and here's what I'm doing. What do you think? Take a look. Oh, yeah, cool. And then people can kind of find each other and support each other on that path. From what you know, what seems complementary with the work that you're doing, and like what are the kind of potential interconnections that you see there between um, Tom and Sports Society?
So a lot of the spaces that I do with poetry, whether it's groups or one-on-one, I definitely see a place to provide that, or very similar offerings through Mycelium Hub. That reminder of a sense of being and a connection to source and to soul essence, and part of that is connection with nature. You know, I visualize that distributed way of being in the world, where one person could be a spark for other people and they're a spark for others and so forth, without having to have a, a central point of control for that. What I could do absolutely inspires other people in other areas of their life, and precisely because it invites a return to the being. And 100% that's a place for mycelium hub and for the offerings and how that framework is building around there, not to keep things closed in, but to help grow out.
Well, I certainly look forward to exploring what exact shape that's going to take, but it really does seem like the antidote to increasing, let's say, top-down control and centralization
Yeah.
is for people to discover their unique uh, expression, their authentic expression, to connect to intuition, to be sovereign,
Yeah.
and to be a unique expression of the divine spark, let's say.
Yeah. How much more bottom up does it get than looking at one person?
It has to start there. Whatever it is that we need to do, it really does have to start there, doesn't it? And I think we're very aligned in that way. So there's another kind of distinction around being called to inner work or being called to serve the community. How would you bridge that juxtaposition in the sense of, just to give an example, like, oh, maybe I should just go to a monastery and just be a monk for a year and just fix myself, and then I can maybe do something useful after that. Well, how do you see that kind of?
They're not just supposed to be. Inner work does serve the community. If I can come into whatever role I am and say, this isn't working for me and this is impacting how I show up, this is a space for me to work through that. Those two things are the same to me. By showing how I'm doing my inner work with other people, that serves everyone. That is serving the community. So for me, they're not juxtaposed in that way. I think a lot of people have this misconception that the idea of serving the community is a denial of the experiences I'm having and what I'm working through. And part of what I explore with a lot of the poetry that I do is actually that doesn't have to be the case at all. And that I can bring my full and most integral self, and with the highlights of what I'm working with and the lowlights of what I'm working with, into that, and not have that distort the space or the community, and to know that I have full control over that. And if anything, being able to bring that into a space actually helps me to connect with my community closer, to say, okay, let's find a solution. Let's live together in a way that works for all of us, knowing that we're all working with these different aspects.
Well, I think that's, those ideas are so important for you to bring, not just to mainstream society, but also to those libertarian, voluntarist, anarchist groups, where it's often seen as this big, this thing that we can't bridge, of like, oh, it's either individualism, anarchy, self-expression, or socialism, where I have to submit and I just do what, the party tells me, or like I'm ruled by the party. But the community and individuality can be expressed in an integrated
they
way.
don't have to be competing forces.
Exactly.
And they're not competing forces for.
Yeah, and that's an important message, I think.
That's true.
To both sides of that discussion. So I appreciate you doing that. Do you want to just share before we close? What are some of the projects that you're involved with? What are some places where people can look you up online if they want to check out your work, and they want to perhaps engage with you? What are some of the things that you're doing where people can see what you're working on?
Sure. So the main landing point for my personal works through the poetry will be my website, tom-shaw.uk. And that is really the landing point for everything, starting point, no matter which aspect of my work you're interested in. I've got a poetic meditation up there now, which is a great little taster of, how can poetry be a vehicle to start doing that? And that's there. You can go check that out. And then I'm still bringing those same gifts and those insights into the other organizations I collaborate with. So Over to the Youth is still going forward at overtotheyouth.com, where we've got the online gatherings going. And then what's coming in new for this year is to because we operate as a charity, is to be able to sponsor some of the youth that we work with to go through really powerful self-discovery and integration courses offered by others, and to work with a mentor in that way, which we're super excited about where that's going. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and I follow you on Substack, and you put out some regular
Yes.
updates there too. So
And that you can sign up to that straight from the website. So
great.
there's
So you've got all your
there,
links,
it's
and
funny.
stuff there.
It's all on there.
Everything's on there. That's great, and we'll put that in the description, of course. So yeah, is there anything else that you want to share before we finish the podcast?
Would you like a poem before we close?
That'd be a muzzy.
we can do the I know you may be familiar with it, but we can do the mycelium and mushroom theme poem if you like, seeing as we're here.
Really appropriate. Go on then.
Yeah, here we go. So I like putting together little books every now and again. So these are on the website. This is Go Forth Butterfly, and this is one of the ones I did thinking about the idea of mycelial networks and fungi. This is Me, Myself, and Fungi. Following my triumphant bloom, my exhale forms a fungal fume. I lower my cap, washed by rain, give up the temporary claim. I leave the spores of my success within the ground as I undress, emigrating, pollinating, for creation's ruminating. Within my soul's mycelium that networks with my cranium, I feel the urge to turn the earth and release all that I could birth. In matter dead and full of life, where the forgotten rotten's rife, terminating, instigating, there's much room for activating. A match ignites. Its hyphal form keeps the gestating beauty warm. Whatever stump or withered log contained within this putrid bog becomes the fuel to heat my home, forming from brackets, stool, and globe, concentrating, generating, bursting forth and liberating. Following my subsequent bloom, my exhale forms a fungal fume. I lower my cap, washed by hail, give up the temporary grail. I leave the spores of my success within the ground as I impress, emigrating, pollinating, more creations ruminating.
Epic.
Well,
Thanks for sharing.
you are very welcome, and honoured to be able to come here and talk to you about this and to share it with everyone listening. It's a real pleasure. And I'm glad that conversations like this are happening more and more, and we're finding a space where we can be, where we are in that state of being, and we can bring that into the work that we do beyond that. And Mycelium Hub's creating this in a really beautiful way. So I'm super honored that you wanted to have me here. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Likewise. And yeah, it's been a really, really thrilling conversation, and I feel like it's been great to really go into depth a bit more about what you do after we've had a few conversations, and we always keep it kind of, there's a bit of scripting, a bit of just in the moment stuff to get into what's alive. So I've really enjoyed that process, and it's been it's a great honor to have you on the podcast, and let's see what unfolds from here. I can't wait to see it.
Neither can I. It's going to be good.
That was really good. It was really good. I really good energy. Good.
Excellent.
We got onto that. That's right.
We've done it. Ah, lovely stuff.